King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits, that's 90 feet, and its breadth 6 cubits, that's 9 feet. So it's 90 feet tall, 9 feet wide. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that the King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace." Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, "O king, live forever." Yeah. What do you want? Verse 10. "You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the burning, fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Before Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall be immediately cast into the burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. Because the king's order was urgent and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, "Did we not cast three men bound into the fire?" They answered and said to the king, "True, O king." He answered and said, "But I see four men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt, and the appearance of the fourth is like a son of the gods." Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors together. The counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed. Their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him and set aside the king's command and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree: any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So Daniel chapter 2 is all about the wisdom of God, as is chapter 1. Chapter 3 is about the power of God. In the book of Daniel, as we're continuing in this study. And in Daniel, this chapter that it's all about power, God has the power, not Nebuchadnezzar. And the way that this chapter is written, it seems like Nebuchadnezzar has his act together. He knows how he wants things to be. Because we see it from repetition time and time again, the way that the kind of music he wants to hear, the kind of furnace he has. What is it? It's a fiery, burning furnace. It's repeated over and over again. And what about that idol that he set up, right? So these are all the things that you see repeated over and over again. And when the Bible repeats phrases over and over again, the Bible does that for a reason. It's supposed to teach us something. So let's try to figure out what that is. But the point is that regardless of how things may seem on the outside, God is in control, especially in the burning fiery furnace, right? He's in control there especially. So in spite of the setup, in spite of the conflict, God delivers his people. That's your outline. You heard the setup, right? I made a big enough deal about it, and I learned from the best. I stole this, borrowed, whatever you want to say, from Alistair Begg, okay? He did it. Yes, I listened to him too. Because I love listening to hear him preach, because he has such good insights. Also, he likes to listen to old man rock music like I do. So, that's another thing that's a bonus. So what's the setup that's taking place here? There's two actual setups. Okay, there's a setup on the Nebuchadnezzar side and also on the side of the magicians, Chaldeans, whatever you want to call these guys. Nebuchadnezzar, he sets up this statue of gold, which is as I mentioned, it's stretched tall and thin. It really looks, I don't know what the proper modifier is, but it just ain't right, okay? Let's just go with a little bit of Appalachian there. Okay, it's just wrong that you have something that is 90 feet tall and only 9 feet wide. Okay, guys, I'm 6'4". Okay, let's say I was 6 feet. That's like seeing someone my size who's 6 feet tall and 6 inches wide. I mean, talking about being half the man I used to be. I mean, it's like, it's just half of what a normal looking human being or hominid or whatever you want to call it should look like. This is not, I mean, it's almost comical what this looks like. And so he sets up this statue. He sets up the leaders. It's almost like he's this kid who has bought this new package of army men, and he's setting them all up. And he's going to play the music. And they're going to march. They're going to dance, and they're going to do his thing. It's almost like he's he's childish. So he gives the order to bow. Everyone bows. Now, this is easy for everyone except for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to do. You know why? They're polytheists. What's one more? What's one more God? Sure, if it makes you happy, King. Yeah, we'll do that. But for an Israelite, this is a really big deal. We'll get to that in just a moment. And that's what we see in verses 1 through 7. But then in verses 8 through 12, the Chaldeans, they set up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They target them. They throw them under the bus. Whatever phrase you want to use, that's what they're doing here. They accuse even Nebuchadnezzar of being a bad ruler. They say, certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs, bad hire, king. I don't know why they're doing this, because in the previous chapter they were on the outs with King Nebuchadnezzar, but most likely a lot of scholars are saying this probably happened about 9 years after chapter 2. So this isn't the next week. Just keep that in mind. So it's about 9 years later. But they're saying, it's your fault, O king. So are you going to do anything about it or not? So they are setting up Daniel's friends here. But in spite of the setup, in spite of the conflict, God's going to deliver his people. Let's look at the conflict. It's in verses 13 through 18. It's the shortest section here in this entire chapter, but it is quite significant because Nebuchadnezzar is furious and he summons and grills these young men who went through Babylon University. They did all the right stuff, and they seemed to check out last week pretty well, especially since they were hanging around with Daniel. Now, where's Daniel in the midst of this? Well, okay, for starters, this is not a passage that is about Daniel. Probably what's happening is those Chaldeans, they're probably trying to take the three of them and wedge them from Daniel in order to have a bit of strategy going on there. But getting back into our section on the conflict that's brewing here, that's taking place, Nebuchadnezzar, furious, he ends his whole questioning of these young men by asking them a very significant question. And it's a question they don't know the answer to. Now, if you've ever been in a court of law, you might have heard lawyers say, don't ever ask the question you don't know the answer to. That's what Nebuchadnezzar does here. He says, and who is the God who will deliver you? I mean, that's up there with Pharaoh saying, who is Yahweh? Oh, well, 10 plagues later, he knows, But now, in this passage, who is the God who will deliver you? Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they're happy to supply the information. Our God is the one we worship, and He's able to save us. And even if He isn't able to save us, we would rather burn to ashes than worship your God. Do you hear the dig in there? I mean, they are dug in. They're like, listen, if this is going to be it, we're going to go out with style, I guess. We are not backing down. Cue Tom Petty, okay? Our God is able, and if He doesn't show up, it's okay, because it is an honor to die for our King, for our God. That is the kind of mentality that we as Americans, we have. This is so foreign to us. If you're listening online and your Bible does not seem a little bit strange to you, you're probably not reading the right one. See, this is why the Bible seems strange. Because we are Westerners. This is an Eastern book. Christianity is not a Western religion. Period. Hard stop. This is not something that Americans came up with. This is God's doing. It was written in places like the Middle East, Africa, small parts of Europe, nowhere in America. Sorry, Australia, you also lost out as well. So this is an Eastern document. They were willing to resist idolatry to the point of death. Question, are we? I'll just give you that one. I'll let you do that homework on your own. But the conflict isn't personal. It isn't political. It's spiritual in nature. And they understand that. The conflict is between a false God and a true and living God. The one true living God. Now, why do they dig in their heels as much as they do? You're probably familiar with Exodus chapter 20, the 10 Commandments, verses 4 and 5. Here's a little bit of the background in case you're new to the Bible. The 10 Commandments is basically God's law code of this is what I am like as a person, as a God, and this is what I want all of my people to be like. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them. Okay, there's a sticking point. And so they're like, this is off the menu. And so, King, you can change our names. You can make us learn Babylonian. You can force us to read all of your texts and all of your culture. You can teach us all the law code. We will get that down cold. But there's two things we will not do. We will not eat that food that you gave us that was sacrificed to idols, and we will not bow down to an idol either. That's their line. And that's where we go from setup to conflict to deliverance, because that's the vast majority of this text when you look at it as the way it's portioned out in verses 19 through 30. Now, if you give a calm and rational response, and it sounds like they're very calm and rational in the way they say this, that should calm people down, right? Except with, no, actually, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. And it doesn't with Nebuchadnezzar. Even less with Nebuchadnezzar. Because there's a saying in the Fikes family, or it's really my saying, I have no chill. Nebuchadnezzar had absolutely zero chill. He was like negative chill. Okay? He did not know what the words calm down in succession with one another meant. That's just not his thing. It doesn't cool things down. And that's not even the goal. Nebuchadnezzar becomes even angrier, and he superheats the furnace that is in the background. I want you to imagine just the face he had, because it sounds like his face went from being just really, really mad to just being animalistic. And can you see the shot behind him? You see the furnace, it's in the background if you're watching the movie. And then all of a sudden you see the red, and it starts becoming white heat, and he's just like, he's about to burst a forehead, a vessel in his forehead. Thank you. Something bad is going to happen. He's about to stroke out. And that's when God steps in and a miracle after miracle takes place. Let's look at verses 21 through 23 again, just to catch ourselves up again. Then these men were bound in their coats, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. I just imagine that they're taking a rope and they're wrapping the ropes all the way, making sure that the hat stays on. You know, it seems like the way that Pam wraps presents sometimes. You know, just get the whole thing bound. Nothing's escaping the burning fiery furnace. Because the king's order was urgent, and the furnace overheated. The flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So there's at least 3 miracles that I see here in this passage. Here's the first miracle. God protects the 3 friends from the point of anger to the point of being in that furnace. There's no way they should have made it there. Just like there's no way that Jesus should have made it from the horrible beatings and whippings that he took to the cross. That's the first. The second miracle, it's one that makes Nebuchadnezzar stand up. Now, if a king is in control, he's going to be sitting on his chair, on his throne. And there's no way he's going to be standing up if everything is going according to plan. Verse 24, though. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He is no longer in control, folks. That's what this passage is saying. He declared to his counselors, this is not my plan. This is not what I said is supposed to take place. This was not in the SOP, guys. And so that's when you start to realize the wheels are falling off. And I want to camp out there for just a second. Now, if you are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they are here in this fiery furnace. It's at that place where they are face to face with either an angel or God. I think it's Jesus. I think it's a pre-incarnate Jesus. And it's at that place they're staying there. They don't walk out. They're free. They are free. They can do anything that they want to right now. They can walk out of the furnace. They don't. They have to be beckoned out by the king. Why? Because in his presence there is great joy. It's there in the furnace that they are finding something better than anything they found in all of Babylon. It's the presence of God's face speaking words to them. Well, that's the second miracle. The third miracle is they come out Hair's fine. Clothes aren't singed. And miracle of miracles, they don't even smell like smoke. Yesterday, there was a little bit of a fire at the fire pit at the house because we invited some of the kids from Yoke over. One of the kids was having a birthday, so we grilled hot dogs. Just they acted like kids. They just tossed the ball around, all that kind of thing. And I walked out this morning into my garage to practice the sermon because that's how I keep things from falling too much by the wayside. And man, I could smell the smoke through a closed garage door. I smelled the brown shirt I was wearing yesterday. It had a hint of oak. It smelled like it had been near a fire. There's not a single Boy Scout alive who can say that they've been to any kind of a campfire and don't smell like smoke. This is the third miracle that takes place. But in the end, the point is that Satan is thwarted, their religion receives greater protections, and the magicians who reported Daniel's friends now report to Daniel's friends. Oops, that was a little mistake. That's an astounding turnaround. So what's the point? The point is, regardless of how it may seem, God is in control. So what do we do with this passage in our own personal life? Why is God letting these men go through this? Because God will be exalted among the nations. Because he is making them version 2.0. He's making them better. He's improving them. This is why God allows us to go through all kinds of trials in our lives. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Count it. This is why you should count it all joy. Joy is one of those places where Satan has a lot of trouble penetrating. When you are absolutely satisfied and delighted in your relationship in Jesus Christ, that's the place where the demons can't reach you. It's when we're not satisfied. It's when we're kind of like, I'm bored. That's the place where the danger usually comes to us. Well, let's go back to the top of James chapter 1, verse 2. Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kind, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. Folks, this is how you live a life of impact without compromise. This is it. By walking in the joy, by saying, God, you are in control, even though I'm clearly not. Even though things look like they're going absolutely crazy all around us in our society, in the world, and wherever you are, there is not a single place where God is not in control. There is not a single molecule that is going to rebel against his sovereign rule and his sovereign reign. That is why you can be confident, why you can be happy and joyful in what God is doing, even in days that are hard.